that, we'd like to have to read a statement on behalf of the board regarding some of the issues that were raised at the last meeting. Okay. As you may know, there have been certain issues that were brought to the attention of the board regarding some aspects of our school district's athletic program, and in particular, the girls' high school soccer program. We've been working on these and other questions through a fact-finding process. During this process, we've heard from a number of stakeholders and thank those participants. Tonight, we wanted to take the opportunity to address the public on this matter and inform you of the expected course of action we will be taking. Upon review of the current policies regarding outside work by district staff, the school district's administration has recommended to the board, and the board readily agrees, that the policies warrant review and amendment. Specifically, the school district is reviewing amendments to the policies relative to a staff member conducting off-season training with student athletes, as well as outside coaching of teams where our student athletes may be participants. In addition, the board has asked the superintendent to review and improve certain procedures within our athletic department and further educate our coaches across all teams. In particular, the means by which team selections are announced to our student athletes to make sure the method used does not cause embarrassment, and ensuring there is better communication and protocols relative to due process and decision-making for student athletes. The board tonight will not address nor allow for the discussion of specific personnel decisions in this matter, nor can we allow public comment where there is discussion of specific students or parents. As a district, we are fortunate and thankful to have many dedicated and talented student athletes. To those student athletes who felt that they were treated unfairly during the tryouts, selection, and notification process, and during the season, we recognize this may have upset you, and we apologize. To our student athletes and parents, we will continue to work with administration in the oversight of the application of the policies and procedures related to our athletic programs in Rockville Center schools. We are committed to fostering a healthy, competitive, and positive culture in athletics and feel these considerations will make our programs stronger. Okay. And now we can segue into how we're going to affect that change. So we move on to policies, and that's what one of our main responsibilities as board members is to do. And I just would like to say personally, now we have a choice to make, and I really think that the right choice for everyone involved in this is for us to move forward. And I hope that when we say we want to move forward, that you understand we're not looking to sweep the past under the rug, but we take what we've learned and we bring it with us. And this is how we can do that. I've learned from the past couple of weeks that our children are listening and they are watching what we're doing. And I hope that we can set a good example moving forward and we can take this with us. So I hope that you will be open-minded and listen to how we go through the process of policy, and I'll just explain quickly how we get through it. We do have policies in place for certain things. Some of them have not been looked at for a while, and sometimes we don't know that they're not working properly until something is raised to our attention. So going back to what I said at the last meeting, we want people to come to us. We want people to write us letters and come to meetings and point out things that we need to know. So we would like to revisit a policy that's been out there. The intention of the policy, I think, was good. There may have been a gray area to it, so we're trying to tighten up that language. And that's policy 6480. Tutoring and professional services for a fee, remuneration, and/or consideration. So we're going to start by looking at this policy. And again, I think what we really realized was that the intention of the original policy was good, maybe was not executed properly, or maybe had too many areas that were a bit gray. So what we're trying to do is kind of put out there what we're expecting from the policy, and we will have to move forward through this process and making sure that that language reflects how the board feels and how the community feels, so that when we go forward, we have something that's in place that represents what we think is the integrity of our programs, our teachers, our staff. So you have to be a little patient with us. We do move through stages, and we're not looking to rush this, but we do want to put it back on the table tonight. So we're going to look at that one first. I think the real goal of this policy has always been, and what we continue to hope for, is that we will not have teachers who are tutoring their students outside. We will not have coaches who will be privately training those students on the outside. So that's the overall goal of what we're looking to do. Well, thank you, Jeff Greenfield. So whether or not the words that we have in place here as a kind of draft capture that, we need to kind of get through it now. So again, I hope you'll be patient with us, and I hope you'll be on board with moving forward with us. Yeah.
If anybody, there should be a copy of this out on the table in the hallway, if anybody wants to look at it, and
So we realize there's a lot of red language on here, so.
then there'll also be opportunity for the public to comment about the policy when visitors, at your opportunity for visitors.
Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely, thank you.
I see some people with that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we're going to dig into it. And as John mentioned, we will allow for public comment on the policy, but we are going to do that during the public mic time, okay? So we're just going to start to work through it. So again, what we tried to do was get some language out here that really separated the rules of how we felt about outside tutoring and coaching. We do have a representative from Ingram and Smith, and we can very well ask our lawyers to help us draft some of this language. And I think as we start to converse about it, that might be an option that might be very good for us to help get the right words on paper to reflect that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Greenfield, citizen taxpayer, life member of PTA Yuba Court. I want to welcome the district attorney, the school district attorney here. I don't remember I'm in my 51st year attending school board meetings on and off. They were going to give me a proclamation when my kids graduate from school here, but only if I would never come back. So I declined that. So I welcome you here tonight, and is this a new policy or a new expense for the district? You'll be at all our meetings, or it's just tonight?
Yeah. It's not a new policy, just for a special issue that needed to be addressed. It's no additional cost to the community.
Okay, thank you. As citizen taxpayer, I'm obligated to ask that. So with this code of conduct, which I heard about on fan radio a little bit, unfortunately, not the right reason to make FAN radio, but do we also have a code of conduct for the coaches that they have? Is there a policy on that, coaches' code of conduct?
There's a document that they do. It's like a kind of like a document that they sign as a coach.
So maybe you want to review that also at this time.
We have been looking at it.
Yeah, and add it to your review process, because in this era.
It doesn't come here because it's not a policy, just so you know, but we do have that under advisement.
So I wanted to ask the attorney if there's anything that will impact the collective bargaining agreement or with respect to changes on this issue.
Sure. Anytime you implement a policy, it has to be consistent with the provisions of the CBAs. So you have to be mindful of any changes that are made. You sit down with the unions in case it affects their terms and conditions of employment. From what I see here, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So we'll have to sit down with the union, make sure that it coincides with the CBA.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dana Greenberg. I'm from 463 Coleridge Road. I'm a little nervous. I've never been here before or spoken, so excuse me. I don't know if this is okay, but when you had the discussion earlier amongst yourselves about 6480, and I know you're all going to be working on that, and I appreciate your hard work on that, is it okay if I offer 3 suggestions or points with regard to that for you to consider?
Yes, please.
Okay. Dr. Johnson, you made a valid point when you talked about the fact that this is a very complex issue and that it's hard to kind of figure out the catch-all for it. I appreciated your point that on one end of the spectrum, a child could move to this district from somewhere else and by coincidence have been coached by somebody And would that be a problem then? Would the coach not be allowed to coach them and whatnot? And I do realize that that kind of extreme circumstance could happen. So what I'd like to suggest when coming up with the policy is that you just have to take what is reasonable and more likely into account. Obviously, we cannot catch every single situation, but I think it would be reasonable to say that a coach should not privately train anybody from this district. I think coaches are entitled to supplement their income using their talents, so I think that's great. But if their primary job is for Rockville Center Schools, I think they should not train privately children from Rockville Center Schools, and I think it would be reasonable to expect that families would be willing to travel 20 or 30 minutes from here for their child to be in a private program with somebody they happen to know is a coach in their district, because what a great advantage to have. So I would suggest that coaches be told, if you're going to privately coach, it has to be outside of a certain radius. It has to be outside of what would be reasonable for people from the community to be taking their children to. So go to the North Shore, go 30, 40, 50 minutes away and coach away privately if you want to. But that really dramatically would decrease the likelihood that a coach would be privately training somebody who would then be a part of their school. That's one suggestion. The other thing I wanted to ask about was that I know you're talking about having one policy, 3 different subsections, and then 3 different forms, and that a coach would be told that they cannot coach children from this district. If for some reason they would be privately, they have to fill out this form. My question is simply filling out the form going to be okay and acceptable, and that's just a formality, and that therefore this would be able to continue? Because I think it would have to be in the policy or in the forms that it would have to be an extreme circumstance, like your child happened to have been coached in swimming.
I think that's what the form is intended for.
Okay.
Because, as we were saying earlier, I think that that's where the grayness was of the old policy. It wasn't clear if it was just that you had to report it and then you were able to do it, or that you weren't able to do it and you had to report it. So I think the form is supposed to be, I want you to know I had this family in my class and whatever circumstance it was, and now this is happening. So the
therefore, it
form,
would not be acceptable to say, I want you to
It shouldn't
know that
clear
I
you
have
of being
this
able-
family
right.
in a travel team and...
right. It shouldn't be undoing the policy.
Okay,
It should be
so
an
they still have-
information vehicle for whatever we might not know,
Okay.
okay?
Great.
Yeah.
Policy will be clear that it
Yes.
shouldn't be done.
Okay.
That's why it
the
needs to be,
bottom line. So
that's why it
there's
needs to be
no-
reworked, but
Right,
yes.
that's why we're reworking it, because
Great.
it needs to be clear, crystal.
Great. Lastly, I remain hopeful for future cohorts of children coming up, that once we tighten this up and fix this up, we will see improvements to that. Personally, I'm speaking as a parent of a child who's currently in the system, currently, I don't want to say victimized, but currently had to be part of the experience of what shouldn't have happened and what shouldn't have gone on. And so I wonder if the board could consider what we could do in the short term for the kids who are currently in middle school and high school and who would like to see some improvement now for their situation. I made a suggestion in my letter, and I just would like to reiterate it to you tonight, that you consider, at least for the next few years, bringing in an independent panel to do tryouts for sports. Of course, I'm selfishly thinking of girls soccer, but why not for everything? I think that because there's a certain amount of mistrust on behalf of community members because of things that have gone on, I think that it would help to gain some of that trust back and help to level the playing field and be more fair if completely independent people. I even think it might be a good idea to put into place in the future. You suggested reaching out to other school districts to see what they're doing. I think I also work in another school district, and I can tell you that I think that this is not just a Rockville Center problem. And I think everybody is trying to kind of figure out how to make these things better, so perhaps people would be interested in swapping. Let's get some coaches from Westchester to be willing to come down for our tryouts, and we'll trade you and send our coaches up to Westchester for your tryouts as a, way to help each other out so that nobody knows the players involved and everything becomes a little bit more fair and independent and objective. I say Westchester because it's a very close network on Long Island, so to simply go to a neighboring town doesn't necessarily take care of that problem. And that's it. Those are the only suggestions I wanted to make while you consider changing the
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Salvatore Romanello, 128 DeMott. So I do have some prepared remarks, but I want to start off with the policy change. This is really simple. It's not hard at all. If you are a teacher in this district and you derive income from outside training, you should not coach a team in that sport, period. That's all you have to do, and it's solved. To have an independent panel come in and do tryouts, that doesn't make any sense. Coaches should take whoever they want, whether it's the best person or the worst person. They need to have that ability. But what you need to do is get rid of the appearance of impropriety. So, if you are a teacher and you draw income from this district, you are a public servant, okay? You should not derive any outside income from an organization where you might have some say over whether that child makes a team. Fundamentally, that is the problem. We all know there's no gray area in that old policy. It's very clear. You should not be coaching, taking money from kids that you are going to coach. Period. The end. Okay? That's simple. I want to start off with why people have so many problems. It's retaliation, very hard to prove. There were discussions here. But the way I was treated, I'm not going to talk about personnel other than the board and the administration generally. We filed a letter. We submitted it to the administration on August 30th. It was, the substance were potential conflicts in the girls' soccer program. We didn't ask for a new tryout. We didn't ask for the composition of the team to change. We didn't even question the results. What we asked for was we asked for disclosure and transparency. It's 3 months later. On October 16th, we received a letter from the Board of Education asking us to show up on October 21st, 5 days later. The 16th was a Wednesday. We were told to show up 5 days later. That letter came in after 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. We were asked to submit additional materials if we had them. We spent the evening writing a letter back to the Board of Education so they could get it on Thursday. The first question we asked was, what was the decision that we were appealing from? We had no written piece of paper. I went into a meeting with the district's counsel, Mr. Powers' partner, and he started talking to me and saying his decision was that he had reviewed papers and that the trial results wouldn't change. And I stopped him and I said, that's great. I didn't contest any of that. I'm here because I want disclosure and transparency. And that's it. We got no other information from the district. On the 17th, as I said, we sent in a letter. We asked what was the decision of the board. And we also asked for an extension of time to put together materials for the board to look at. On Friday at 5 o'clock, we got a response. And the response was as follows. With regards to the season soccer tryouts, the superintendent of schools does not intend to alter the results. That's great, but I didn't ask for the results to be altered, so I'm not sure. We're ships passing in the night here. We want transparency and disclosure, and you're giving me a decision on an issue I didn't raise. We also asked for an extension. Now, this is Friday. The hearing is Monday. I have never heard of a denial of an extension on that short period of time. This is what we were told. The times for the meetings have been already established. Please let us know if you will be willing to attend your scheduled time on Monday, October 21st. So I spent my weekend doing this. You've all read it. We put together a brief with actual evidence. You've chosen to ignore that evidence. I don't need to get into any of that. I just want the community to know what you're up against if you take on the administration on any issue and you have to go before this board. Due process mandated that I get more than a weekend to put together my papers. Thankfully, I've been doing this for 25 years, so I could do it because I'm an attorney. But what about people who don't have the means to do that? They could never be heard. They could never put together these papers. And so the issue here, it's not so much a soccer issue anymore. The issue is the Board of Education and the lack of transparency. Where I really got ticked off, when I got this letter. And it wasn't because you, the Board of Education, on November 8th said to me that you wouldn't order a new fact-finding. I assumed that was going to be the case. What ticked me off was your apology. The apology was to the students involved who feel they were treated unfairly during the tryouts. Do you really believe it's how the students felt? If they felt they were treated unfairly, You know they were treated unfairly, because, well, I'll tell you why. You're changing the policy, because that's a big issue. You also are changing the method in which these girls were told that they didn't make the team. So it's no longer, hey, a varsity player who gets cut from JV gets an envelope and it says, congratulations on making the JV. And then you walk to the parking lot to meet your JV teammates. Well, someone made that decision. There were adults in charge. And as far as I know, those adults are still in charge. To the community, I want to thank the people who have supported us. We've gotten so many emails, statements, letters. People had the courage to write to this board. The letters, I read them, they were heartbreaking. They were much worse than what my daughter had to go through and that what other kids had to go through. I am sure you were impacted by those letters because you believe in the community and the people of this community. But you've sat here and we hide behind personnel and everything else, and we can't tell you about the facts that we put together here. We're not allowed to let the public know about that. We need a board that's committed to transparency. Many of you ran on that very issue. That was your platform, transparency. There is none with respect to what happened during this process. Thank you.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. I'm Karen Parker, 37 Southard. I have 2 kids who graduated from Southside, and I currently have an 8th grader. And I'm also the Booster Club president. So supporting the athletes at Southside is a really important cause for me. And between all my kids, they played multiple sports at Southside. And even my daughter even played on the Southside soccer team. And my truth from that era is a little different from a lot of the things I've been hearing. And you know, she didn't make the team her freshman year. And a lot of people believe she should have. And for us, that was life. Because sometimes you make the team and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you deserve to and you slip through the cracks. And sometimes you don't get the recognition you deserve. But there's a fine line between sour grapes over a lack of recognition and a conflict of interest and, you know, getting a special treatment that you don't deserve. So at any rate, she played JV that freshman year, and she tried out again the next year, and she made the team. And my children have also played on many travel teams, so I have a lot of experience with that as well. You know, you start to play on a travel team as a kid because you love that sport and you just want more of it. So you play and you improve your skills, and then eventually, if your aspirations are to go on to college and play that sport, that travel team is a showcase for college recruiting. And I can tell you from my experience, there is no inherent conflict of interest with a travel team coach and their players. I'm not going to rehash the details of what happened with the soccer team because I don't feel that's necessary. It's been investigated, but my frustration is that the perception in the community was based on a narrative that was driven by half-truths and in many cases outright lies. And this really matters to me because athletics matter to me. I know what kids learn from athletics. They learn discipline and determination and teamwork and resilience and respect. Leaders are born on the athletic fields, and I know this to be true. So what I really hope comes out of this is something positive for the kids, because that's really why we're here. That's why all of you guys spend all this time, you know, working so hard when you have regular jobs and you come and you spend all these hours doing this. So I hope that we can really assess this policy. I appreciate that you're reviewing it. My frustration is the impetus to review it. But if you are going to review it, my knee-jerk reaction to what you're doing is that you're going to make it very difficult for anyone other than a teacher in this building really to be one of our coaches. And if you are restricting so tightly their ability to coach on an outside travel team, you're also eliminating some really qualified candidates for coaching positions at our school. So basically, I also understand and agree with the other person who came and spoke. You know, why not have a neutral evaluator? There's nothing wrong with that. It's done all the time. But I think too, you know, being kind of impressed with the drama presentation and the things that Chris was saying and the quote about how, you know, all kids need great teachers, they deserve great teachers. I think all athletes deserve great coaches. And I think we really need to learn from this, move on, and we need to create a culture in our athletic department where we want the very best coaches that we can possibly get. And I think we need to support those coaches. And I think we need clearly defined roles within our athletic director, our Board of Education, and our superintendent, especially when we're getting a new superintendent. We need to know where the buck stops, and there needs to be a real accountability for when a ball is dropped. I think the parents need to know where they should go. I think they need to know what the board can and cannot do, and what they can and cannot say, and what they can and cannot share. And mostly, I think that we need to look at this policy and make sure it's full of specific guidelines for any outside coaching, tutoring, or training. And there need to be timelines for reporting any kind of outside coaching. And I hope that we will move ahead and we will not lose sight of what's most important, and that's our student athletes.
Thank you.
No one else, just one quick follow-up. No, not really, John. So I listened to all the debate and heard all the debate on the sports. So the question I asked you had the school attorney come here tonight. Where's the athletic director? Why don't you have the athletic director come to hear from the customer?
She's traveling right now, so I will say
Well,
that she
let's have
couldn't
her
come
come
tonight.
to the next meeting.
Okay.
I think, my father taught me it's important to talk to the customer.
Right.
It's important to hear from the customer. I think the athletic director needs to hear from the customer, i.e. the taxpayers.